Well, good morning, everybody. This is our Strategic Plan Development Subcommittee of the Oregon STEM Investment Council. We are calling this wonderful group together for our meeting this morning, and what we're going to be doing is go through the really 5 elements of the agenda, and what we're going to start with is just if we can go around a little bit for a quick introduction, including
our newest member.
Okay. So that you know who all of us are and we can understand. And when you, and if you can, we're going to give kind of a very quick introduction of where we come from so you know what perspectives we're bringing.
Sure.
And then if you can then do the same. So,
Yep.
Andrew, can you kick us off for introduction?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Andrew McGough. I'm the Director of Work Systems, which is the Workforce Development Board for the City of Portland, Washington, and Multnomah counties.
I'm Terrell Smith. I'm a full-time teacher at Computer Science, Sherwood High School, and I'm also ASFL lead the Oregon Computer Science Teachers Association. And my students are hopefully not playing computer games right now. It's hard to manage from remote, but I do the best I can.
Cloning technology.
Yeah.
I'm Jessica Howard. I'm the campus president of the Southeast Campus for Community College.
Tom Thompson with the Oregon Department of Education.
In your role as?
Oh, I am the, no.
you are it.
No, I'm in, actually work with career and technical education. I'm also a former science teacher. So work primarily in what's called industrial and engineering systems. And STEM team, robotics.
I was just going to say his most important role.
Yeah, but I've got 2 robotics teams right now. It's keeping me up most of the night.
Well, hopefully you do well in the competition. Yeah. I'm Beth Underzad. I'm the director of the statewide after-school network.
Good morning, Herb Fricky, Cooper's Eats Engineers. We just rebranded our firm.
Whoa!
Akana is the name of our firm. It's derived from one of my tribal language for the word to build. We just kicked it off this week. Here we are. I don't even have any cards before me. But anyway, we're off and running.
Right. And Craig, do you want to fill us in?
And Craig Hudson from Garmin down in Salem.
Fantastic. And Mark Lewis, Director of STEM for Oregon. Just to give you a quick history, I'm a former aerospace engineer doing satellite work and transitioned to teaching. So I was a teacher, worked in post-secondary and worked in international community development. Also worked extensively with teacher professional development and support for administrators in Washington State around policy work, and senior program officer for Washington STEM, giving out managing grants portfolio before arriving at the chief education officers.
Oh, I thought I had multiple titles, so you beat me. So I'm Leslie Garcia. Thank you for having me. And I'm the Assistant Chief Diversity Officer and Assistant Vice Provost for OHSU. And my background is in educational leadership and also strategic planning within the health and sciences. And I've been at OHSU for about 23 years or so. I also lead outreach initiatives that are directed to students in high school and in college, undergrad, to go into the pipeline into the health and sciences as well at OHSU. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm Thompson Morrison. I'm serving as the chair of the subcommittee. I, along with Herb, are on the STEM Investment Council, and I have a software company called Fuse Insight. I also serve on the board of the TAO and the TAO Foundation. So,
And we have
Joe and Kyle, we're just doing a quick intros.
Okay. I am Joe Oshiro. I am the Grant Shepherd at ODE for the regional STEM hubs and the STEM STEAM CTE activities. Before that, I worked for ETech.
Good morning. Sorry I'm late. I'm Kyle Ritchie-Knoll, and I direct education and workforce policy for the Oregon Business Council. And then we have an education nonprofit called Oregon Learns that I am the director of.
Fantastic. Great.
So with that, I was looking, hopefully we can get our screen up. What we're going to do today is we're going to continue working on our manifesto. And then we're going to start putting underneath it the elements that are going to be at the strategic and tactical levels that are going to be how it is that we're going to actually fulfill this manifesto. So recognizing that we chose as a group to be aspirational. We chose not to start with the understanding what we want to do is produce a heavy document that sat on someone's desk, but really to create that North Star, that inspirational goal that we could begin to help transform how we thought about education around STEM and education as it impacts kids in all other areas. But so we started with there are different elements of the manifesto that we defined, and we started with our vision. Then we worked on our beliefs. And in the last time between our two sessions, we all worked together and jointly edited the doc, our beliefs. Mark and I then came back and we kind of assimilated and synthesized all those comments, and they're in here. This is still very much a living document, but the beliefs we can now kind of begin to hone those beliefs. I wish that this would come back up again. Let's try that again. And so what we want to do here is to do a quick review of the beliefs, see if there's anything that, again, there's a lot of tuning that can be done at this point, but see if there's anything that we're seeing as really, if there's any areas of discomfort. Obviously, edges still need to be sanded, but are we generally getting close? Are we 70-80% there? And then what we really want to do is then focus on the next section, that one, thank you, which were the goals. And really start to hone in. To my eyes, or is that kind of blurry?
It's kind of blurry.
Kind of blurry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let's maybe blow it up and see.
Let me see if I can kind of take this off and take this larger. And let's go like this, and then let's go like that, and let's go like this.
That's pretty good.
That's better.
Are we getting closer?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
So
helps.
legible. Let me go up one more time.
There. Yeah.
Are we clear? Is that good?
Yeah, that's great.
So why don't we just kind of
So Craig, this is online with the Google Doc, so you'll be able to also edit if you're doing.
and by the way, is Craig the only one not coming in, dialing in?
I think so. Yeah.
I said Dieter was online.
Dietrich's online as
Oh, okay.
well.
Good. So let's just kind of take a moment and just kind of look at this again. Are we getting, just anything that's jumping off the page right now? And do you want me to read it or just look at it? Reading it with Jessica's nodding her head.
I think it'd be great to hear it.
To hear it.
I think
hear
so
it.
too.
Okay. All people create. Our students should not just be consumers of knowledge. They need to be creators of it in a way that unleashes their creative genius, interests, and talents. 2. Each student deserves an opportunity at prosperity. There continue to be persistent inequalities for women and students of color in high-wage, high-demand professions. Further, many students in poverty and from rural areas are left behind. No talent should be left on the table. 3. Diversity is our strength. Differences of thought, culture, gender, and ethnicity provide critical perspectives and voices to address today's complex challenges. Innovation emerges where different ideas and cultures intermingle. 4. Engaged learners succeed. How we teach our students is as important as what we teach them. We must create meaningful learning experiences that empower students to embrace their curiosity and take ownership of their learning. 5. Education is a collective responsibility. Effective STEM learning takes place both in and outside of classrooms. Everyone in our community is a potential educator, And we need to build solutions that develop partnerships with all of the human capital in our communities. 6. Innovation is the cornerstone of prosperity. STEM is not just about filling jobs, but about creating jobs. Building an innovation-based economy is essential for, how's that? Is essential for long-term prosperity, resulting in competitive advantage in a global marketplace. 7. Learning takes courage, persistence, and humility. Pushing the boundaries of one's understanding requires us to embrace ambiguity and to take intellectual risks. What we do with what we don't know is as important as what we do know. We should prioritize questions over answers. 8. STEM skills are essential skills. Advancements in technology and information are transforming every industrial sector from agriculture to energy, medicine to manufacturing, forestry to nanotechnology. 9. All learning is cross-disciplinary. It is the interconnectedness of ideas that enable people to integrate new learning with their prior experiences. STEM, by its nature, synthesizes analytical and creative thinking. It is a powerful tool that sits at the crossroads of the sciences, arts, and humanities. 10. The best way to learn STEM is to do it. Education is not about retaining facts or disconnected bits of information. Utilizing purpose-driven learning challenges students to pursue deeper questions and to solve problems that are relevant and meaningful. Okay. Reflections? First of all, general impression, and then we can dig in, because again, let's just kind of look at it at different levels. Yeah.
Very nice job reading it. I saw these batching into 3 main groups. Innovation is the cornerstone of prosperity, with each student deserves opportunities to achieve prosperity, and diversity is our strength. Education is a collective responsibility, with learning takes courage, persistence, and humility. Engaged learners succeed, and all learning is cross-disciplinary. And then STEM skills are essential skills leading to engaged learning, persistence, creativity, and innovation. Best way to learn STEM is to do STEM. All people create.
So within that, how do you want us to take that?
Yeah, to me, it was just a more organized way of looking at those 10 ideas.
So we intentionally did decide not to do that.
Okay.
And so the reason being
Because I think,
is,
Tom, you reflected on that as well.
Yeah,
in your
Tom's thought was
comments.
Very similar.
Right,
I
so-
don't know if it's the same arrangement, and I don't actually even remember what my 4, I had 4 instead of 3. And my thinking was not, it was just that if you want to tell somebody, I'm thinking the elevator speech right now, especially since that's what we have going on, is a lot of elevator speech kinds of things, quick communication. I think those are strong, but if you're going to tell somebody, what are your beliefs, there's no way I'm going to pull this out and read them. But if I had some quick things and say, but it's more than that, it's something in some ways. So it's mainly a communication strategy is being able to boil this down into something that I or somebody else can remember and put out there and say our beliefs focus on these 4 things. And then we get into some detail.
I think that's a really critical point, because I've always found that if you can get it down to 3, you can remember and articulate that really easily. You say, well, we believe basically blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Now, so we struggled with, so that I think is absolutely something that we ought to grapple with. The other part is also this discussion about why, because when we looked at a lot of manifestos, if we started to kind of take the 8 or I guess we 10, and bucket them into kind of 3 sections, that actually sometimes loses the impact of it, because then you can say, oh, this is that section, this is that section, that's that section, and that we intentionally wanted to be discordant, which is kind of this process of interleaving, bouncing back and forth. Because we wanted people to kind of read each one of them and go, oh wow, that's kind of, oh yeah, well, how's that? Because what you're doing in a manifesto is in part also kind of getting people to get out of their old mindset and into a potential new mindset. So I think that both are valid, but I really think that what Tom was talking about is a critical piece of this.
How we communicate.
How we communicate and distill it down to, these are the 3 things. So I don't know whether or not we can find whether or not the 2 are contradictory, or whether or not we can find a place to do both of those.
And when I'm thinking about it, I'm not thinking about trying to compress this language, because I like the language here. So I'm not thinking, saying take these 10 and boil them down to 3. It's really grouping them and kind of thinking about, these are the
Here's our major
and
themes.
then for somebody that wants to know more, that wants to really understand it, you've got the detail there. The other thing is that it allows you to tie it back to the vision. I think a lot easier.
So Joe, can we go back to your grouping, and I'll see if I can pull up Tom's notes and see if we can can you do that, Mark? Because it'll be in the history. Can we start with Joe with your 3 groupings and see if we can put labels on those, and if we can start to kind of define what those might, to get to what Tom was saying back is, if we could get it down to 3, I think, did you have 3? What were your 3?
Innovation is the cornerstone of prosperity.
Okay. So I'm just going to get down here. Innovation is the cornerstone.
Thompson, could you just edit that perhaps into the Google Doc at like the page 3?
That's where I've done it. I'm actually there already. Go down to
Oh, okay.
go down
I need to roll down to where you're
bottom.
at.
Yeah, I'm
Appreciate
just using some quick notes there. And I'll do this. I'll just make one more. The last page. Okay. You see it, Craig?
I'm with you. Appreciate it.
Go.
Education is a collective responsibility.
Okay.
STEM skills are essential skills, leading to engaged learning.
Are these all grouped together, or are these distinct groups that others go into?
I had them as distinct groups.
These are these your heading, your groups? These are the groups that you lump them under. Perfect.
These are the groups
That's
that I lumped them under.
okay, cool. That's what we're going toward. Are you what was that again, Jill?
Essential skills,
Hmm?
leading to engaged learning. Persistence. Creativity. And innovation.
Wow.
We really love those N's in innovation.
Oh, I know.
Or we could just, STEM skills are essential skills, because then the rest is the...
I put that so it's circled back.
Yeah.
Virtuous cycle. But yes, I agree.
But I'm thinking about where Tom's coming from in terms of what we can keep in our brain to say, hey, how are you doing? What are you doing? The elevator,
Yep.
right? But boy, so innovation's cornerstone of prosperity. We believe that innovation's cornerstone of prosperity, that education's a collective responsibility, and that STEM skills are essential skills.
By itself, though, innovation, you kind of lose the aspect of sustainability and using innovation the right way. Sometimes we've used innovation in the wrong way.
Fair enough, and all of this needs, what we're trying to do is find something that we then peel, and everything, when we say STEM skills are essential skills, it's essentially the same thing, is that we've got to then peel that onion. So what do you mean by that? To Tom's point, what you want to do is to have something that people ask you then, well, what does that mean? You're trying to say, here's a doorway, and you want them to, but they have to open up that door. And you kind of say, well, what do you mean by innovation? To your point. Well, this is what we mean by innovation. What do you mean by, say, essential skills? Well, this is what we mean by essential skills. Tom, are we kind of getting to what you're looking at?
Yeah, exactly. That's this. It doesn't end there. It's just that's the piece I can remember too.
Right. And they get someone to say, that's really interesting. Tell me more.
And you may even have an executive summary or something that you hand out as a one-pager that can have those, and then the 10 points can follow. You know, so there are different ways.
And this is where the
Messaging.
overlap with the communications and advocacy
Mhm.
work is really,
Right.
critical in this. The one thing that I'm seeing that is a real miss here so far, that we're not capturing is the equity and
Right.
opportunity piece that STEM represents opportunity to address.
So Andrew, did you have a thought on that?
I didn't have a thought.
If I can jump in on number 2, education, this is Craig. Education as a collective responsibility is a nice jingle, and it takes us a little bit away from just professing STEM as this and STEM as that and everything is STEM. But I don't know, I'm hesitating. I don't have a better choice of words here, guys, but I do like the thought of trying to bring something in about the best way to learn STEM is to do STEM, or something along the lines of
How you teach it.
the ways we integrate learning and our experiences and such. I think it's, if no disrespect intended, but yeah, it's like, education is a collective responsibility. Everyone needs to be pulled together. I don't know if we need to be the ones that carry that flag.
I was having sort of the same thought on that one.
Okay.
I mean, to me, it's really about education has to evolve.
We have to reimagine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's in our vision.
Evolve.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
So,
And-
so maybe we swap that one, we modify that one with something around, I mean, the reimagining is the powerful piece, which involves a collective responsibility, which involves the doing, which involves,
Exactly.
so in fact, collective responsibility is a kind of a sub-point underneath the reimagining.
Yes.
Hey guys, how about let's rewind to maybe just before the meeting started. Imagine Curiosity Unleashed. And then if we tie that into a tagline of advertising, then we have commonality and a I don't know what the right marketing term is for that, but something that's becomes our brand.
Well, it's about the brand promise and about creating what that aspiration is for the brand. So, yeah.
What about reimagining education as a
It-
collective responsibility?
Well, and I think just to get even clearer, because I think we understand STEM and CTE, but a lot of the world still does not know what that means. So to me, and I'm spending a lot of time lately talking with legislators who really are just regular folks who come to this building, and put on a different hat. But I think we have to help them understand that STEM can be STEM and CTE can be a way to help us reimagine education, because they don't necessarily make that connection. Because when we say reimagine education, they say, okay, we're doing that, in schools, but I don't know that they see in the same way we do that STEM or applied learning or partnerships with employers or all these things can actually be the way to reimagine education. And the question I had about the beliefs really tied into 8 and 9, but also the last statement that Joe put up there. I wondered if we were clear enough that these are essential skills for all students, that in fact STEM and science and math, they're foundational skills for all students, not just those who want these careers.
Right.
That in fact we know that they can help with habits of mind, and they're foundational to college or to careers, and that they can engage students and help them complete. So I'd like to be sure that we're somehow, not setting STEM aside, but in fact we're saying we believe these are really critical for all students, and they're going to tie to the important things around completion and engagement and meaning. So I didn't know. As I read them, I could read that in, but I wondered if the general person or a lawmaker or others would see that in the way that we worded it.
And I don't think that the general public understands even the word STEM. I had an engineer say to me, well, what is STEM? Okay, so somebody who works in the industry, who's deeply involved, and so assuming that people understand is going to be important to not go there.
Right.
So again, I want to point out that our communications of our beliefs and our value systems is going to be a critical piece of how we move forward and get the word out and build advocacy around our strategic plan. I'm not sure in the best interest of our time here that we can fully nuance all of those in terms of aggregating those key messages that need to be out in the field. I'm happy to share with this committee some of the communication messages that I've shared with the Communications and Advocacy Committee that have come from a number of other states that absolutely reflect all of these comments that are being made. I love the specific ad that you have, Kyle, in terms of a modification of one of our beliefs and value statements, which is that it's not just STEM skills are essential skills. That's not quite going far enough, but it's essential skills for all students, and that's a very specific capture of the belief statements that set of belief statements that we have in front of us. I think what we want to do is are these sufficient, these 10 sufficient? Are we missing anything here, or are we duplicative? That's my proposal to the team, that we not get too obsessed about the boiling it down and generating a subset of beliefs, but do these as a whole capture us. And what I loved, Tom, when I looked at yours, it was and Joe's as well, was it gave an opportunity for us to say, 4 of these are about teaching and learning, 2 of these are about equity, 2 of them are about economic development, essentially. That was a really helpful way of going, have we captured the main thrusts of what STEM is through our belief statements? And I thought that was really valuable.
My thoughts are reflected in so many of the comments that have happened. Having a heart attack over here, coughing on tea and trying to crispate. Anyway, but I guess part of me thinks if it's a manifesto, it's not an elevator speech.
Yeah.
So there's that. And a manifesto, I think, necessarily needs to err on the side of more complete thoughts around it. And that doesn't mean that there isn't great work to be done on that side of it. But I wouldn't want us to make our manifesto something that is something, because a manifesto is not something you come across very often. It feels like an older thing, an older type of declaration of things. It has sort of a might to it because it's a manifesto. So I guess, I'm starting to see these as maybe 2 different tasks. And then the thing I thought was so powerful is that when you read through this, with the exception of number 8 that points out explicitly technology, you can replace the word STEM with the word education. And you're getting to the comments that we all have about.
But I think we should be explicit about that.
But when people say, what is STEM? And then you go through this, S equals science, T equals. STEM is not those 4 things. Those are the means to something else.
Yes.
Right.
And so that's the key, because otherwise people say, well, does this fit into STEM? Does this fit into STEM?
Right.
And then it becomes this what fits in the basket game,
Right.
and you miss the whole point. Which
Right.
I think what's so profound about a manifesto is that you're getting to that back there. And so I guess I love the idea that we're really talking about something bigger than science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And I think it's critical to keep that in here, because I don't think your average bear understand, is going to get to that point if we don't really shape this in a way that gets them there.
Right.
And I think it is going to be a little longer. Because I like it, because it's, but I think we need that other piece too. I mean, because I can't do this in an elevator, but I don't know that anyone wants a manifesto.
They don't want to be with you in an elevator with a manifesto.
Hit the stop button.
But I do think that there are 2 things, to Mark's point. We really have to think about, is this manifesto getting close? Is it aspiring and reaching what we hope it does? That's one question we should first address. The second one is, again, to Tom and Joe's point was, is it possible for us to do quick distillation? Well,
absolutely.
And this is not to replace the manifesto. This is a part of the communication of the manifesto. They get someone to say, you got a manifesto? Can I see that? Here you go. It's to get us to that.
Yeah.
But, so they are they're two related, but completely separate discussions. I think that it's really great that we've kind of got the framework for that, whatever, I don't know if we want to call it the elevator pitch, but whatever it is, distillation. The,
Sounds sciencey.
Oregon's all about distilling,
But-
brewing and,
Exactly.
like that.
But so since we have a framework for that, we'll leave this on the document, and we can kind of, as a community, kind of keep chipping at this one and honing it. Let's go back and say on the manifesto itself, it sounds like I'm getting a sense that we're going in the right direction here, and it's aspirational enough to make it feel inspiring.
Can we look at number 8?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because
And any others, yeah.
Okay, because we did have the point I was making about their essential skills for all students, and if
Yep.
we said that, then the
Yep.
rest of it doesn't exactly apply.
Well, I think that's exactly what we're trying to.
Because it doesn't speak to the
Yes.
point I'm trying to make, that, you know, even the future English major can benefit from this, or even a history
I see,
major.
yeah.
That these aren't set aside students on a STEM track. That they're foundational skills,
see.
that they form habits of mind, they help apply, they
And
help
that-
students complete.
Exactly.
Take
and
that
then-
advancement sentence and put it under innovation.
The what?
The
Take-
advancements in technology.
Yeah.
Da-da-da, put it under innovation.
Because that speaks a bit to where the economy is going,
Right.
Mhm.
I see.
and then
Okay.
that this,
So this is societal participation, for it to be, to develop the habits of mind that.
number 8, yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what's the thinking on this one?
That it would go under 6, that's sort of, well, or, I mean, you may be able to transform this one. I guess there
Does-
are 2
No,
points.
there's 2
One
points,
point
yeah.
is that all students should have strong skills and experiences
Right.
in science and math and engineering and technology. You know,
Yes.
I would want that for my children. I would want that for all children. that they have
It's
this.
a basic language.
Exactly.
These are, right.
Right, so there's that point. I think also in that bucket is that
Yep.
I believe it helps provide meaning, and it will help us reach our completion goals, and
Right.
they're important strategies. And then there's this other bucket that in fact these skills will prepare students for an economy that we know
Yes.
is changing and transforming. So I don't know if those are 2 separate points,
Well, and even
or
where it
if you
says,
condense them.
because right now, particularly math is considered the big barrier.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just essential, it is essential, it's essential for all completions, really. Aspects of STEM are essential for all completions. But we want it to be more than essential, right? In terms of, I gotta check off that box to get my English degree. I have to get my college level math taken care of and my one chemistry or whatever. But it should also, I wonder if it could be something that's not just essential, but is something that, yeah.
Well, I mean, this is what I love is when you look back at how Galileo talked about math, it was the language of the universe. And it truly is the language of the universe,
Yeah.
right? And if we start thinking about it within the context of, wow, this is how...
Open doors.
Exactly.
Mind.
So this is
Right.
where the fluency comes in. And this is why I believe so strongly in digital literacy, right? Because when you start teaching all kids computational thinking, that's a fluency that opens up huge opportunities, right? So these are all fluencies. And so maybe if we can, because to Kyle, because if we are multilingual, all of a sudden that's when it becomes really powerful. So I'm able to solve that, but I'm also a musician, and I'm a visual artist, and I'm a mathematician.
And it's joyful, it's not just a barrier to be overcome.
Exactly.
Right.
I wish we could put, it's so easy to talk about math as a barrier
Mhm.
and not as an open.
That I have to versus
Right.
I get to.
Mhm.
But
Can we get at some of that by tweaking number 5 to say STEM is a vehicle for reimagining education as a collective responsibility?
My own biggest concern as we start, and maybe we're not there, and maybe this is a slippery slope thing, and whatever, is that, I've thought a lot about why are we focusing on STEM, because a lot of the arguments you can use for anything. You know, and we get to the point where it's all about all of education, and then why do you have a STEM council? Why do you have an all-education council, you know?
We have one of those as well.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, but it's
A little
kinda like-
less focused than this
Right,
one.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, what is it that's truly unique here besides the S, the T, the E, and the M, you know? And part of that is that really about prosperity, about the economy and that type of thing. So whatever we do in rearranging this, and so far I'm not sure that I disagree with where things are. I think we have to not lose sight of that. That's one of the things, you don't hear people talking about, well, pick any discipline without, you know, so I don't have any arguments, but you don't hear people talking about other disciplines as driving Oregon's economy, driving the nation's economy, as improving prosperity. You hear them talk about literacy, and you know that's important. Gender literacy is important, or that kind of thing. Those are critical, but you don't hear people talking about driving. This is what you hear about for STEM. Whatever we do, we can't. I don't think we can
muddy that, yeah.
We
I
can't
agree.
muddy that.
And the
Right.
technology piece.
Right.
Right.
It's really about the focus there. If it's just a fun thing to do and a cool thing to teach about, so are a lot of things. And
Okay.
so it's kind of like what
Yeah.
makes this
Right.
something worth focusing.
Yeah.
And I agree with that, and I wouldn't want to lose that language in A that follows all
No.
students.
But it's a different
I
point.
also though, and I'm reacting a little bit to just what I hear, and so sometimes what I hear is that STEM is really for those, I'm going to really make a broad generalization here, but for more gifted kids, upper middle class, successful anyway,
White
so
males,
why do
yeah.
we need to make these investments? Or you'll be okay. Those kids are going to be fine.
And it also tends to be metro versus rural.
Right, and
Right.
I mean, I even have a friend whose kid is at Pomona, and she said, well, he got into these engineering schools, but I don't see him sitting in a cubicle. I was like, you're saying this to me? I had to sit down with her and say, what, I don't think you understand this, and he'll be just fine. But I thought, you know, so that was a person who's in that category that everybody says, oh, he'll be just
Yeah.
fine. So I don't want to belabor it, I just think that, and you're a teacher here, so do you think I'm overstating this? Sometimes is there science and math for these kids, but not necessarily across the spectrum?
CTE is part of STEM, and if we look into that reaches everyone and all economies and all regions. So I see STEM as that. But while I can champion the broad education issue, Tom's right, there's others who do that. So I didn't come here I want to stay somewhat focused, but have a significant document. And number 4 even, while that's mine, it's very
get
broad.
it.
I like it.
STEM engages
But
learners.
that does get
It
at
talks about
what
the art
I'm
of
talking
teaching, and
about.
that's really, really important.
Mhm.
And so, you know, and just curious
does
about
get
our
us.
process here, you know, we have a lot of human capital here doing some wordsmithing. And I just want to ask the question, what's our best mission and use of time? I'd like the 10 items, and we can take a little bit of time to edit in the future. But I'm impressed with it, actually.
Well, that's really, Terrell, where we wanted to get to today. Is are we getting closer to where we know that we're not done editing this, but are we on track? And it sounds like, in general, the sense is, wow, this is achieving the aspirational intention here. So let's take that as let's continue this as a living document. We all still have access to it. Let's use the time to keep wordsmithing that. In the same way, we'll take another rev the way that we did, because that was very productive, and put comments in there, and we will go and reflect on it again. And I think that if we just kind of do quick, and they can be shorter reflections each time, but we will evolve in our thinking, and we'll see how we can tune it. But let's take editing offline onto the document and do that before the next session. But it sounds like our general consensus is that we're on the right track here.
Can I summarize some of the comments that I heard?
Please.
So that I can make sure that we're incorporating that. One is I'm hearing that we need to ensure that this reflects the STEM specific nature more than the general aspects. There was a comment about STEM literacy opens doors, that it's about, we need to make sure that the essential skills might be incorporated as two different things. It's not just succeeding in a job, but it's the STEM skills that are the 21st century thinking skills that are critical here. And that not just, well, so a more specific one around the engaged learners succeed, that STEM engages learners.
Yes.
Right? So again, that's this, making it a little more STEM specific, and then we know that engaged learners succeed can be one of the other aspects to it, or something like that. Any-
Is this document the place where we also explain, and I'm not sure I see it in here, what STEM is?
We will, in terms of the as we wrap around a
In terms of
context.
Of relating
Context,
to
yeah.
the
Right.
creativity. The only other couple things I'd say really fast is that I think we can own through the STEM conversation and the STEM label two real critical concepts in education generally, but that are really something that works with STEM, and that is cross-disciplinary work and applied work.
Right.
Yeah.
There are other fields that use aspects of that not like STEM, and so that's another distinguishing feature. And so again, if we're trying to figure out, okay, well, where's the nugget that actually holds together this concept of STEM, and then going beyond that to figure out that we're going past the STEM, I would think we'd have to explain that in here somewhere.
Good. Well, with that, let's move on to really what a critical piece of our work today, which is around the goal. Joe, did you have one more
I
comment?
had one little piece of wordsmithing that I want to throw out here now because of Herb's comment. In the vision, what if we include the word sustainable? An inclusive, sustainable, innovation-based economy.
Like that.
Nodding heads, let's throw that in.
It's not sustainable.
Is that in our vision, you were saying?
Well, that's pretty.
Herb, does that work?
Yeah, I think that works. Yeah.
That feels,
Because it brings up what's sustainable.
what's innovative, what's inclusive.
Yeah.
I mean,
Could
Okay.
rapidly
Leslie,
turn into
did
the
you
thing we don't
have
want.
some thoughts as
a new
a fresh
person?
as a fresh thinker to
Okay,
this?
I'm
you guys,
absorbing it all.
what have you been
Darn it.
drinking over here?
No, you're good. No, I think my only comments, and I can send these comments, would be in terms of just the language. So I'm looking at number 2, for example, where it says each student deserves an opportunity of prosperity.
Yeah.
I would recommend we change maybe inequities in gender, race, ethnicity, and lower income status versus women or students of color. And I don't know if students of color is the term that you use throughout your other work, because in the literature many times we refer to as minorities or underrepresented minorities, the terminology. So I just don't know what the consistent term is for this group, if this is it, or if you're using other. So just consistency is one of my thoughts. And then number
So do you have,
yes,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry, to emphasize what,
And I can
specific-
send you my notes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, or give you my
We'll
notes.
incorporate those.
The other piece would be on number 3. I would recommend that we add ability, because in here as well. I mean, you can go on in terms of diversity and all the different labels, etc. But certainly, I think ability, because it could be physical or it could be mental, it could be whatever it could be. And then maybe race, because ethnicity is one versus race is different. So either just add that. And then I don't know about the last word. I don't have a recommendation in terms of where culture intermingles. I think that we could maybe come with another stronger word. I'm not sure what it is at this point. So, but other than that, you guys are doing
Good.
I think sustainable is fine. What I was getting at too is, some cultures, technology is just not part of the culture. It's really bringing in that. Some of the native students I've talked to, they have a difficult time looking at beyond what they've been taught as what is valuable in their culture than going into high tech or something like that. They have to take a leap in their
Technology
thinking.
is more
Right, so it's a cultural.
high tech.
thing
Right,
about.
there's a technology of
Right.
dressmaking, pottery, basket weaving.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
But when you're starting to use the resources of the earth in a way that's exploiting it, then it becomes, oh, I don't want to do that.
Yep.
So they step back away.
One clarification, should we be using ethnicity and race, or one or the
Well,
other?
They're separate.
Exactly.
So, yeah, because Latinos are not considered a race, we're
Right.
considered an ethnicity.
Right,
You know, whereas in white and black and others
Okay.
are considered race.
good,
So,
I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
We should probably check the language of the equity lens.
Well, that's what I'm assuming, because that's really the guiding piece.
We need to use those terms.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying in terms of, I don't know what the language
I don't
that
know,
you're
it's not
using
minority.
within,
But we want to be consistent.
Yes.
right?
It's
Yes.
students of color. That's communities of color.
That's pretty common.
Because the,
Students of color.
it's, and we have, OEIB hasn't,
Yeah,
we
and
had a copy of that we talked about.
there's been in terms of the usage of minority in particular, that has been seen as a pejorative term. And so that we've been using communities of color and underrepresented, underserved populations to be more general in terms of that.
Yeah, so-
Particularly when many of our
exactly.
communities, the minority is the majority, you know, so.
Right.
Okay, great.
Okay.
We'll incorporate some of these in the next round.
Absolutely.
and get
And
it-
you also will have access to the document,
Yes.
so it's a shared doc.
Yes.
So
Okay.
we're all, this group has not been shy. You should have seen how marked up this thing was. This is really a healthy
Be
conversation.
there first, or all your ideas, somebody else is contributing.
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
thought of that.
Yeah, it looks
Yep.
clean now.
That's good.
Boy, the whole side was filled with stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Craig, did you have anything before we move on?
No, I appreciate it, kind of listening in and so forth. I always get a big smile on my face when I hear a whole bunch of smart people get together and start talking about STEM, so this is great.
Well, that's
Awesome.
a leap. I don't know if I'm willing to go there,
Yeah.
Craig. So let's turn now to goals. Okay, so this is where Craig really helped us here, because we kind of took an initial swag at it where we were focusing on the beliefs. We then threw up a bunch of 8 or 9 just get the conversation going. Craig looked at this and said, well, maybe there's a grouping of 4. We thought a potential 5. We basically distilled down a little bit what Craig did to try to get us closer to kind of these key goals by which, well, okay, this is our aspiration. What are our goals? And then that's going to allow us to then say, okay, what's our roadmap to achieve those goals? So the next level here is, if we can look at this, is 2 things we need to do here on goals. One, to look at them as a whole and see what may be missing or what may be feeling redundant. And 2, then we're going to throw this into a quick table where we're going to go and start putting what are the strategies by which we have in place, or we should put in place, to start to address each of these goals that are focused, the tactics and strategies for those goals. Because that is then going to be the meat underneath this thing to say, well, no, actually, we're serious about doing it, and this is how we're doing it. Because that's where we're going to establish credibility. It's one thing to have a manifesto and everybody says, well, that's really nice. But then when they get to, you're doing that and you're doing this, oh, you guys are really wired here. You guys are doing it right. That's what we need to do, is to establish credibility, because that's needed for everybody to be able actually to get on board. So this is a critical bridging process, is the goals, to get to our ultimately the strategies and tactics. So let's take a moment here and look at our 5, the 4 or potentially 6 or whatever we're going to do. And let me read through it as a whole, and then we'll kind of reflect back on it in detail. Align supply and demand. Increase number and diversity of students who successfully complete post-secondary credentials, degrees, and certifications in high-demand STEM fields. Increase potential. Increase students' interest in STEM by increasing literacy, confidence, awareness, and achievement for all students. Broader access. Each Oregon student needs access to effective STEM instruction and high-quality hands-on learning environments both in and out of school. improve capacity, increase the quantity and effectiveness of P16 STEM educators both in and out of school. And the other was building awareness and support, increase the understanding of Oregonians about the critical importance of STEM in their own economic competitiveness and to that of the state. And then potentially. So this is kind of where we're at. Again, this is about 50% stage. Initial impressions, thought, Joe?
I like all five. I think you can fold equity into number 3 by saying broader access for all students, and then perhaps fleshing that out once you're out of the boldface. And in number 2, if you're going to say literacy, I think you also need to say numeracy.
And number 2 confuses me a little bit. We start with the STEM concept, and we drift towards the broad sense of learning and literacy. So I don't, does literacy, confidence, awareness, and achievement for all students means in the STEM areas? Or, you know, what does it mean? I just, that was lost on me. I don't, if I read that, I don't get focus.
And I think interest is kind of weak.
Well, and you know, again,
STEM capability?
Foundational skills?
fluency. Again, because mathematics is considered such a barrier, I don't know that, I mean, I think it is a gateway, right? This particular piece of the trajectory into higher education. And so I do think that that's part of what we're looking at, although it's not the STEM end of the line kind of goal, but it's certainly a means to many goals in education. So I see what you're saying, which is, are we doing the whole thing, or are we just focused, you know, where's our focus? I wonder if we don't have to choose between the two, and we can accomplish both. Because the reality is, we have a mathematics problem. And to say that that's not part of what we're talking about is,
It's
I don't know how we can say
it's the elephant in the room.
you know, so it's the means to many goals, and then you focus more about, well, then what is it about mathematics? And well, it's this wonderful thing, and then you start to flesh out the whole idea that this is creativity and innovation, and a different kind of thinking. But I don't think you can lose that piece about all students, which you keep coming back to. I agree with that, but I hear you.
So is this though about, like, as you say, the elephant in the room? We need to improve math proficiency. It's a very serious problem.
It is the biggest.
And there are other things too, not just that. But I mean, I almost feel like we just need to say that, because not everyone, again, will understand that math is such a big.
People don't seem to know.
And that's kind of the struggle that that we talked about, all this interconnected, and then we say, well, let's do math.
Yeah.
And I think I agree. I mean, it's like that's
It's the biggest
can't
thing on
leave
the
it out.
Pareto
yeah,
chart.
right. And it's like you can't
Could we-
unless we want
But
to do
I
STEAM.
think every student needs those math skills.
So could we
STEAM,
do, so could we potentially within, I could see us within both 1 and 2, because 1 is about increasing successfully completing post-secondary credentials. If you're not successful in mathematics, you're certainly not going to increase post-secondary credentials. So that could be a number 1 strategy or objective underneath that. Increasing, number 2 is kind of a mishmash of different things. 1, I believe that we need to have a goal somewhat around the affective domain, because that
Absolutely.
impacts student choice and trajectory even more than their academic achievement does.
Yes.
But we also need an academic achievement goal, in particular because it is one of the 2 goals of the STEM Investment Council that is legislated. So it needs to be very clearly articulated that that achievement in STEM, academic achievement, is an important piece of it. And again, we could put that into number 1, in some ways as well.
I think number 2, if we're working on interest there, skills and knowledge combine both. So you can say skills and knowledge instead of interest, because we're looking for skills, but we're also, you know, they come hand in hand, but I like to separate them when I'm talking about achievement, because we are talking about skills. We don't always talk about skills, we talk about knowledge when we generally think about education, but this is where we come in with CTE and STEM. It's about skills, not excluding knowledge. That's why I think they can go hand in hand. I want to make a comment about from the trenches, just an idea of math. Well, and I hear that, and I share the idea of math's a challenge or an important thing. But what I want to know if you're talking about we need more students in calculus, or do we need? So that's where the challenge is, where we're driving a lot of students, or most all of them, through a sequence to a high level of math. I think I personally think it's a deeper understanding of a little lower level of math, and that's what will pay us. And where we get sideways a little bit is that legislation says every high school student has to have 3 years of math, end of sentence. And then it goes to me and my administrators, and it has to be fleshed out, and what is assumed is that, you know, it's you come in with algebra 1 and geometry, and you have to go algebra 2 and statistics, and then what? And the then what is where we can come in, but it hasn't been fleshed out yet.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I think that math focus is down in the strategies piece. I mean, it needs to be there, but the goals seem to me they're kind of broader, longer lasting. You know, you don't want to keep changing your goals time after time, so it's an important piece, but you can also call it out.
Well, that's for all students may work there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
And that's, you know, you eventually get to the point where everything is hunky-dory about math, and you know, and we move on to the next thing. But if we're successful in this whole thing, but the goals should be sort of more eternal.
So, in number 2, are we saying STEM literacy? Do we want to put numeracy in there?
Well, I wonder if skills, dispositions, and knowledge, or skills, attitudes, you know, that those
Could
start
for
to
people
encompass
who
that.
know, but aren't we also trying to talk to people who don't know? Nobody else
But
likes to receive it.
but I think that we can say, again, what's the role here is the role is the bridge, and then we can start talking about the tactics underneath that.
Yeah.
So again,
I think Joe's right, though. I think numeracy should be in there because of what the research tells us about the critical component of
Is
numeracy.
is numeracy a subset of literacy? I think, or does it
Yeah.
need
To
be
most
called
So I think
No.
this one's conflated by the way, just the positioning of the wording. So it's to be honest, it says the goal, if we're to really read it the way it is increase student interest in STEM, period. And then it goes on to a strategy by increasing numeracy and literacy. And so I think if we just switch
Why
that
don't we
and
say
change
that?
it to say that our goal is to increase students' STEM knowledge, skills, whatever, and then
Yes.
and then those skills are, you know, numeracy is a skill set within a STEM skill, right?
aspirations.
And aspirations.
Because
I
once
like
you
it.
remove interest, then you've removed that concept. Now you've got, okay, I want to be able to do this. Oh, and I'm aware that I'm
And I go back to, which I don't disagree with that, I go back to all of these things in some way have to be some way we can track, measure, watch that. And aspiration is great, but I think what we eventually do is.
We have instruments.
I think, yeah, there are pieces in there, but there are also other ways besides another instrument. And I was just reminding myself of the
SAT
testimony,
and
and, you know, the House Ed and Senate Ed, and
Oh,
all
yeah.
those kinds of things. We don't
Right.
need another instrument.
Yeah.
But we can look at things like you know, just their you know, where are they going in their education? I mean, that
That
essentially
tells
is
us.
a piece of the aspirational.
Absolutely.
So if we're increasing the number of students in those, then we're
Right.
probably working on aspiration. Again, going along with that too, one other thing is in number 1, talking about STEM fields, that's always a sticky thing because STEM fields, most people go to engineering,
Computer science.
professional scientists, computer scientists, and they don't go to advanced manufacturing, those kinds of things. I've seen people use STEM-related careers. There's other language out there.
STEM intense.
STEM, yeah, there's a variety of things out there, but
STEM informed.
somewhere along the line, there's a whole
STEM-related.
bank of, that we want to kind of make sure we're not denying.
Yeah.
So just an FYI, sent to these, so again,
You want-
3 subcommittees. One of them is on data and metrics and measurement. They're defining STEM fields, STEM careers, STEM jobs, etc. Brookings Institute has a tremendous new way of defining STEM fields that
Which is more aligned
will
with,
get-
I think,
which
where
is
we-
very aligned with what you just said. So
So it
So-
sounds, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, I'm wondering on number 2, if I heard Mark say the goal is to increase student interest in STEM.
that's the way it's currently worded.
Right, but that
No,
means
not
more to me than increasing innovation potential in students. I mean, that's a student goal, but the bold doesn't say anything to me really about students, if I just did a first glance. So I don't want to wordsmith, I'm just wondering if anyone else sees it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems to take it away from the person.
Mm-hmm.
So
As opposed
what,
to increasing potential, which sounds more like, in other words, it's the question, does that word belong in?
does innovation quote? So yeah, so that was Craig's recommendation while we were typing it.
Do you want to say more about
But
this,
that-
Craig?
So this is real time. Yeah, that was Craig. Put it in there. So Craig, why do you put innovation in there?
Well, I was just trying to listen and see what words were sort of rattling around, and increased potential. Is that like climbing a hill, so you have greater momentum on the bottom end of it, or what? So it's really wrapped around innovation. We're trying to.
Fascinating.
I don't know if that's the best word for this, but we're trying to capture and show that. Again, I go back to kind of the branding of imagine curiosity unleashed, and innovation is the cornerstone of prosperity. So if we can tie some of those words together, then it becomes easier for us to remember and easier for people to understand what our goals are. So, yeah, I don't know how that fits, but that was my thought.
And I can see too that after reading those bolds, I don't see people in that. So,
If you read the rest of it, it's there, but to
yeah,
me this
but I
is
don't see it in the bold, and that's the place where it's directed.
right.
Well, I think we may pull out the bold.
Yeah, something.
So
I
it's
like
something
actually. I
about-
like the again because I like
I like the
bites. To
Right.
be able to say
I
to
agree.
say something there, but
It's just knowing how people read.
yeah.
They see the bolds and the bullets and
So are we getting, it sounds like wordsmithing is absolutely needed, and we can take that again offline to kind of tune this. But are we generally in the ballpark? It sounds like we are, and that
Sure.
something's really missing.
I would only say number 5 might be in a different committee. Should that be ours, or can it be handled in the communications?
Well, the how would be part of the communications and advocacy. The establishing a specific goal, do we believe that is critical for achieving our ends? Then it needs to be a goal, a broad statewide goal for our STEM strategy is to increase awareness. We know that people don't know what STEM is, so
And
That's
this-
not in there. It says the importance of STEM.
yeah.
It doesn't say what it is, but maybe that's a strategy.
And is that a strategy in the same way that building foundational skills in math? I mean, because that's as important as a communications effort, but we said that was a strategy. So is
Yeah, well, there's a
communications
huge mix. So
strategy?
we could also say, all of number 2 is subsumed into number 1, right? We can say how we parse this. Really, all of these, can fit into number 1, because to increase student teacher effectiveness is going to increase student achievement, increasing student interest and access to out-of-school time will drive more of them interested into STEM fields. So we could do that, but I think we lose something there. So what we're in the business of right now is sort of where do we parse it? And what rises to the top in terms of what we want to emphasize in those 5.
I see 1 and 2 are outputs, they're things that we kind of, and 3 and 4 and 5 are inputs, they're things that are getting you to those. Which is fine with me, I think that, thinking about that keeps them kind of focused in there.
It's almost like you have an overarching goal at the start. You have more defined goals underneath. And you really want to be organized.
And an overarching goal,
The overarching
then
goal
an
is
X.
to align supply and demand and to increase innovation potential.
And
How are we gonna
increase
do this?
participation in the economy. So there's two
Okay.
there, I would say there's two there. One is to align supply and demand and increase participation of traditionally underrepresented
Okay.
populations in that economy.
I would add community in there too. Especially in more rural areas. They may not see the job potential if they're there.
So, are we, at this point, are we okay to kind of use these as our buckets? And then begin to play with that? As our, that we do have 5 buckets? Recognizing that, again, this is a manifesto for the entire, this is going to the council. And this is representing all the council, not just obviously our subcommittee.
There's only one thing I don't see in there because of, how you parse it out. I mean, but you've got access for all students. You have capacity for us and educators to teach those students. But we don't talk about improving or changing the education itself. We talk about capacity for the educators. We don't talk about the
The
content.
effectiveness.
Or the effectiveness.
And that
Well,
web access is part of that, which is kind of an odd, I had to go there and read that. I didn't
Right.
immediately pull that out.
But access is,
Yeah, but
so it's, so,
Fascinating.
because I think if we're gonna, I mean, that's just not really called out there. And I
Does
don't
capacity
know.
mean that? I hear what you're saying.
So, tell me what do you really, what's the key?
Well, see, if you read number 4, I
Can we
thought
take
that
away
was.
the bolds around here? Just because I think that those are really getting in the way of looking at the goals. I don't think that we've adequately captured the,
Yeah, well, see,
Does that work
number
better?
4,
Sure, I'm good.
Number 4, I thought when I started reading that, when it said improve capacity, I thought I was gonna see increase the quantity and effective, once I saw effectiveness, I thought I was gonna see something about what you're teaching. But no, it's about the educator. And I think that's really important. I wouldn't say that that's not, that's measurable and that is capacity, but it doesn't speak at all to how we're teaching, whether they're really learning new ways, more hands-on, more contextual, more, it doesn't speak to that at all.
Yeah.
And I just wonder
You
if,
don't see that in
I'm
effectiveness?
suggesting
I saw
that we
in
remove
effectiveness.
improved capacity. I'm suggesting that we remove our summaries at the beginning because
Oh.
those are getting in the way.
You
Those
said-
are not aligned to what we're,
Are you
that's where
saying, this is
people
what
are-
you're saying, buddy?
Yes.
Okay, you just
we
said
can-
remove
we
the
can-
bolds. I took the bolds away.
Just take, yeah, the words in the
I'm
bold
listening.
because,
That's what I like.
because that's where all of the comments have been centered
Yeah.
around that rather than the sentences after.
Okay.
So let's just take away those and say, are we capturing what we want, by these?
But I
goals?
think, and
Yeah.
I think we really have to address this piece about the effectiveness of
Yes.
how we learn,
it's
how we.
the effectiveness of educators. It doesn't,
The
which
educational
hopefully
quality.
they're educating the right kind of content. You can have a really effective educator who doesn't have the right textbook, or doesn't have the,
And
I
what
don't know, I
I
don't
see is, right, all the
That's actually number
effectiveness
3.
and capacity is on the back of the educators, and there's nothing like, more room in the master schedule,
Right.
more classrooms, more lab
Exactly.
equipment,
Exactly.
Yeah. So we need to build the
organizational,
system, the support structures.
Yeah.
the system support.
I see it more as if the kid, if he gets a C in
Andrew, you can do
calculus
that.
and somebody says, you're done,
I'm not an
you're not going
educator.
anywhere.
Yeah,
There's another
I
path-
think
there's another
sure.
pathway you can find
Yeah.
for answer,
Yeah.
okay.
So,
It's not necessarily that you're a brilliant math, but we'll find you another skill.
yeah, it doesn't speak to anything except
Yeah.
the
Okay.
teacher, doesn't talk about the
So,
structure,
of the
doesn't talk about the
environment,
curriculum,
okay.
doesn't talk about.
Number
Does
3
number
talks,
3? Oh,
some things, we're both chiming in on this thing. Number 3 talks about the programs. in the schools, if you want to.
And out of schools, yep.
In and out of schools.
That's the,
And number 4 can be,
The educator.
can talk about building the staff, the teaching force to do that.
yeah.
I don't know that it's worded quite exactly for that purpose, but those two.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Put
Yeah,
so
I
3
saw
focus
that
on
too,
students.
But again, it was through access, so I didn't,
Right.
Yeah, so you've got
So do we-
program with 3, you've got 4, you've got teacher,
Yep.
so you've got place, you've got person, you've got.
And you have to- and you have
But
to
we're
have
missing the
both.
supportive environment.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
not just the educator, but it's the entire environment that needs to shift so that the educator feels
And
effective.
yeah, we referred to that STEM initiative thing.
Yeah, yeah,
as
you-
effective
yeah.
learning environments.
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is, you know,
yeah, I
kind of like
didn't,
what, all that stuff that surrounds, you've got a teacher in there, but you've got all those other pieces that are.
because if the student doesn't do well, you just say, oh, the teacher didn't.
Okay, let's
And
look
is
at
that
language
unique
from the
to STEM?
framework.
I guess
I
that's
like
my
that.
question. I don't know if that's unique to STEM. I mean,
No,
I don't know
it's
how you
not.
parse that out just for,
Yeah.
isn't that education?
This
in
this is the
general?
thin edge of the wedge,
Yeah.
right?
I'm
Of,
saying-
of
I guess
transforming
if that's the
education.
end game, we're trying to force broader
We are.
educational reform or something, but, you know, I mean, as
Yeah.
a,
Yeah.
it's very difficult to sit here as someone who's not an educator and try and focus on this very nuanced world, when the reality is, the whole thing needs to work like this.
Yeah.
Right, but we can't say that explicitly.
Well, why not?
Well, we can. Yeah, we
No, I guess the point being is that
It's
it
a
goes back to what
system
Tom was talking about before in terms of focus, that we're going to be most effective driving change when we create new educational experiences, and those experiences begin to, what happens when that happens within an educational environment, people begin to realize this is not limited to STEM, I can actually use that
Yeah.
for teaching history.
Yeah.
And it becomes an example where you create a new learning experience.
And
and
how
then
long
that's-
is that gonna take? I
It
guess
doesn't
is
take
the
long.
It
question.
doesn't take,
You know, there's no urgency in this either.
Oh.
as far as- I mean, I'm
Oh,
not
good-
feeling
good comment.
urgency.
Great.
in the goal
Yeah.
here?
Yeah.
Okay.
In the manifesto overall, or?
I love it.
This
Where's
whole
the
section?
urgency?
Yeah.
But again, think about when we see students who take these entrance exams, they are largely far more prepared in writing than they are in math. And it's not that our teachers aren't doing, it's a layered thing. So part of this is I don't want us to say we've got an educational problem, period. I think we've got all kinds of challenges. A lot of them, I think, are tied to resources. But with STEM, there's a particular pressing issue and tremendous promise in how it's, so I think it is an opportunity for us to help, you know, with the wedge. I think you're absolutely right. But I wouldn't want to suggest from that everything else isn't working, because I don't think that's true.
I'm thinking the urgency piece too. As I recall in the STEM council thing, there is a time, there is a date or something like that.
2025.
Yeah, that may be not as urgent as we want it to be, but
Yeah.
but
Right.
there's a
My
place.
kids graduated by then.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Okay, so
now,
the timeline is when
I better
Andrew's,
hope.
before Andrew's kids
Before
graduate.
How old are your kids?
13.
Yeah.
And he's watching
3
Elf,
years.
you know, I mean, so.
We have-
it's,
I mean, in truth,
Yeah.
that's urgency within our world, the corporate world,
Mhm.
is defined by creating what's called a BHAG and putting 5 years against that BHAG. The big, hairy, audacious goal. That is, that if you're going to go in and have organizational change, you are going to have to put in place something that makes everybody feel really uncomfortable. So you put an aspiration in there that everybody looks around the room and says, crap, how are we going to get there? And then you say, we have 5 years to get it. Oh, you mean I can't kick this can down the road? You guys are going to have to change your behavior, because this is a cultural issue, and it's a behavioral issue that has to change today in order to achieve that goal. So that's a device of creating the shift. So one of my challenges from the original legislation, which I voiced from the beginning, was our aspiration was too low, and the timeline was too long. If we were to double the number of graduates in 20 years, that actually achieves, we are actually...
Only 10 now.
10 years now? Okay.
Yeah, 10.
Well, we're already graduating half of what the national average is. So what that means is that we're going to meet the national average today in 10 or 15 years. It's like, I don't think so. So that's why we have, but that is to Andrew's point, is that the urgency is absolutely a critical piece, because we've got kids graduating today that need to be fixed.
There was an interesting, I'm trying to think who it was, but somebody that's on the CTE side of things kept telling us, we don't get this done now, it's not going to happen. And for a while, we were thinking about it from a legislative perspective and, elevated interest and all of that. Rakowitz, yes, John. But actually clarified and said, no, it has to do with when we need these people at our door, that actually working, doing this. And it's like, okay, that's the backwards piece. That's where you kind of work backwards from there and say, so, if these people aren't going to be if students aren't going to be at the door ready to do this by this time, we've lost.
And this is where a couple of things that we can pull this in. One, I hope that our manifesto expresses the urgency, and if it doesn't, we need to modify that a little bit. The context and background that will go into this needs to make a very, very strong and urgent case for this, and not just but for the economic prosperity, for the economy, for the businesses, and for the individuals and communities. And then I think that the other piece is that in our strategies, as we put forward our strategies, they need to convey that sense of urgency and timeline, so that we then put that over to the data and metrics and say, you choose outcomes that are within 5 years aligned to these goals. Okay, so that we can see change, demonstrable change, and we're going to need to see demonstrable change in 2 years from a biennial standpoint. So if we're not changing student interest and motivation and awareness of STEM careers, we're not on the right track, because that has to happen before we actually see them making choices in post-secondary environments to go into STEM fields. So I think we want to be very clear on the early indicators that also express that urgency there.
Mark, if I can grab the floor for a second. On item 4, we've struck the word quantity, and I do concur it's maybe a little out of place in number 4, but I think quantity is an important thing, especially from the business community side, is that number 1 is increase the number and diversity of students who complete those credentials. But right now, I think, and what I've heard and what I've seen is sort of a choke point. We have 500,000 kids K through 12, and the output of that is, 2,500 with STEM degrees. So I think the choke point at the 12 to 16 or whatever those grades are, going into the collegiate experience, they're not producing enough of our workforce. So Thompson's words are on target, where we have about a 2% graduation rate, where nationally it's a 4%. But if you look at who's retiring, that's like 6 and 7%.
Yeah.
So we've got to be really pushing the quantity. We need to get more people through the system.
But that's in number 1. The quantity's in number 1.
Yeah.
But there's also
I just don't know if it drives, and maybe we just need to modify 1 slightly that really addresses the choke point that we see after we get out of 12th grade.
But
Yeah.
number 1 does say
Our biggest
post-secondary.
choke point.
Number 4 is quantity of educators, and that's really, if you don't have the people there, and this is what we're seeing in CTE, we don't have the instructors there, we can't, nothing,
So
We have to have quantity in, because right now, who's going to replace me? Who's going to fill those programs we create with all this good work? And my computer science teachers are saying, we're looking around, and there's a few of us in a room, and we're saying how, and there's all these initiatives going on, and we're there to do it, but we're concerned that so quantity is really important.
Community college.
Yeah.
So I think one thing that, when we are saying the choke points, I think this is what's going to be critical for our strategies and for these goals, is that we clearly articulate where we believe that the choke points are, and we're going to have to go after data to make sure that we're backing those up. So teacher capacity, the quantity of educators, the choke point in post-secondary is yes and no. I've heard both, that we've got enough student interest, but they can't take enough classes and they get dropped out. So there is a bit of a choke point there, but there's also a choke point in terms of student interest and people selecting into careers. And there's a huge choke point in our graduation rates, right? The fact that we have a 72% 5-year graduation rate, a completer rate so we're including GEDs now and everything else, it's still abysmal. Okay, I mean that's just insanely abysmal. So if we don't include, identify that as a major choke point in terms of graduation rates. Anyway,
I apologize, folks, I have to get back to my next class. And,
thank you.
Okay,
T.
We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Terrell Terrell.
Wonderful. At this point, do we want to go and, Mark, you
I've got
captured a lot of notes?
A lot of notes.
So we really
I'm not
need
sure I
to
have
do
any
a-
clarity, but I have a lot of notes.
Right, but we can come back with a reworking of the goals that capture this and get us closer, and then we can go take this back on the dock and have wordsmithing done there. Does that sound like
Yeah.
we flushed out the main issues?
I guess the one, the question explicit equity goal,
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but oftentimes, increased number and diversity, it's almost like
It's
it's,
subsumed.
yeah, but at the same time, it's not, when it's buried, it gets overlooked. And so
Yeah.
the question is, does that need to be very explicit?
Particularly given
Go,
the
yeah,
realities
because
of
it's not,
who's getting these degrees.
Oh, we got that number, okay.
I think it does.
Yeah.
I personally think it needs to be an explicit goal and not buried in. Because we can bury it in, and we can certainly do indicators disaggregated, but if it's not increased participation of underrepresented populations in the STEM economy, then we're
That's a nice
not,
way to say
I
it.
like
we're
that.
not addressing it.
Because
Okay,
number
write that
3
down.
is also
I did.
just broader access in the classroom, out of the
Yeah.
classroom, so that doesn't
So it's
exactly
complementary.
speak,
Yeah.
right. I think that it's stating it more explicitly would be
And if it's
important.
stated in the goals, then it will be very clearly outlined what the strategy is to achieve the goal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And, I assume that this point would be in the strategies, strategies, which I assume we're going to work on next time, or strategy, I think that's
Yeah,
really
with
where
a
the
half an
rubber
hour
road
left, we're
starts
probably-
to meet the road, right?
Yeah.
But one of the quote choke points is really a perception issue around the fact that the CTE is not normally considered in STEM conversations. We've got a lot of education
has
to
to
go
be,
there, and this notion that students are either choosing a university route or a technical route is really hurting us. It's hurting
Yeah.
everybody nationwide because you
Absolutely.
shouldn't have to make that choice. You should be able to do things that can go either way, and then people don't go into CTE if they don't have a real connection to that already, which means they've had some exposure to it, they know someone in it, something like that. But I mean, how many of us went into college knowing about a CTE program that was a real option for us? Well, and many people are advised out of it because that's this
Yes.
rather than
Yep.
that one. But it's not really a choke point, but I think it's a huge problem. And so and I don't know where it fits in all of this, but we haven't called out, I guess we haven't really defined STEM right, so.
All of the conversations that I've been a part of define STEM in the broader sense that it is inclusive of this overlapping CTE aspects of it, that we're not defining STEM by a 4-year degree. Absolutely. That's nowhere in the conversations right now. But we need to make it
The
explicit.
general person
Yep.
doesn't know
Yep.
that at all.
Yep.
Instructors are clearly a problem, both at.
Yeah.
Now that Terrell has left, I feel as an
access-
educator myself, I'm going to take umbrage.
Access to qualified instructors, there's no doubt
Yeah.
about it. I mean,
Yeah.
Wilson has a wood shop, they can't find someone to go and, teach it.
Yes.
I think that's a problem, but I don't understand where this great divide happened between CTE, because when I went to school, I went to wood shop, I went to metal shop, I went to auto shop,
Yep.
and just everybody did it.
Yeah.
And it was
Right.
like, the boys did this and the girls did that, and.
We were sewing and cooking.
You're not allowed down in the shop wing at all, you got
Personal
chased out.
hygiene.
But it's-
I took those
Remember
courses too.
And that's sort of taken out of the high school.
Well,
I did.
everyone was expected, we're all going off to either get a
So-
job or go to college. And the
Right.
expectation, we're all going to college, but
That's
we
the-
knew that not everyone was going there. But,
Yeah.
But
it
they
didn't
still
hurt.
took,
Sorry, I
you
forgot
took
about
those
that.
courses, right?
Okay, Herb.
Good discussion.
Good seeing you, thanks.
Careful.
One
careful.
question I do want to ask, so one, we recognize that is one of our major challenges, is to walk back from the, the overly academic. We're disproportionately balanced in our education system, unbalanced toward an academic mindset. So, but I do want to ask you, Andrew, about these goals. one potential that we haven't really talked about is the incumbent workforce. I mean, to meet our needs, if we're really looking at this from a systemic perspective, there's a huge potential there.
Your best CNC instructor is working at PCC Structurals right now. You can't find a better person to help someone understand how to, run a metal lathe or program a CNC machine. Someone who's currently doing that, but there's no access other than adjunct, potentially at a community college, which is a great option. But at the K through 12 level, there's it's at least a year certification process, I think.
Shorter, but still
It
it's a
could be,
problem.
but
Yeah.
there's a big barrier there.
Yeah.
So part of what I hear you saying, Andrew, is the actual systems and trajectory. So I've been kind of mulling that over in my mind. How do you build systems that can produce or allow?
Yes.
That part is.
But again, I think we get stuck on a lot of this high cost stuff and other things. I mean, the way I learned area, we all got up in the classroom, we counted the number of steps from around the room, and so it became real. It's just helping people understand you can get up from behind the desk and go outside, it's okay. And it's like now you don't have to build a shop because maybe that's not practical, but we're all running around with these things, and if you had someone that would help a little boy do more on this thing than play a game that they obsess over for 10 hours a day. There's so much content potentially in here, and I just don't see that happening. It's just like, again, my kid's a 13-year-old doofus boy.
So make the content real, which is awesome. And I heard you say utilize our workforce as educators.
Yeah.
That's a critical strategy. What I meant by my question was a lot of this right now feels pipeline. It doesn't feel systemic.
The notion of pipeline is so compelling, it's so easy to think about, but what is it, 80% of the people who are in the workforce now will be in the workforce in 2025 or something like that, and then in a community college, the vast majority, a clear majority, something like 60 to 70% of our students are not coming directly from college, from high school. So this idea that that's what we're doing is a product of people who went through a university track and who are in jobs like ours.
But I think industry is beginning to try and is figuring that out, and they will figure it out on their own outside of the education enterprise. It's like nurses used to be trained by hospitals, the vast majority of nurses. And I think you're on the software side, increasingly it's about competency. So if you have an employee who's on and they have the foundational skills, because you've already got an employee, it's cheap for an employer to connect that person who has aptitude and foundational skills and build technical skills that they need. Much cheaper than going to a university or somewhere else to try and find it.
And also times much more effective because of the fact that there's a disconnect between what is being taught in the universities and what is really the needs.
This is where I would like to counter that pipeline paradigm in this document is what I'm saying. So I understand that industry is going to be much more nimble. How do we capture that in our goals to acknowledge that and to provide support from a systems level? Knowing that we have to pull in, it's not just, this to me is not, again, which I say to my STEM hubs often, the STEM hubs are not a K-12 or a K-20 initiative. They're an economic development initiative. And so a STEM plan for the state cannot be seen as just an education initiative. It has to reflect our workforce and economic development needs more broadly.
I think that the key there, because so many STEM jobs do require a bachelor's degree, is to make sure that industry and education are connected appropriately. Because
so that's a key strategy.
It can be an emerging gap because technology moves much faster than education moves.
I'm also just thinking about focus and resources and investments.
Sure.
Again, my brain kind of always goes to the system stuff and the investments, and I don't know, can we do all of that? I don't think we can ignore the incumbent workforce. workforce, but,
So Kyle,
So I think we
I think that one of the things we also need to get out of is a traditional scarcity model. The scarcity model is that we need these resources allocated and that they're limited and that and then we have to work within a pie which has a number of slices and can we do it all? I think what is happening here, and I'm sure, and Andrews was alluding to this, is that when you see it within that broader economic development context and you see partnership being the entire corporate community and the entire community, that all of a sudden a lot of assets open up that previously weren't thought about and ways of education open up. So our
Yeah,
paradigm
absolutely.
of how we do it changes, and actually we move to a paradigm of abundance, which is look at all the assets we have as opposed to look at the things we don't have.
right.
And I think that when you start moving out of a structured pipeline or production model into a more of an agile community model, a huge number of assets all of a sudden open up. And so
I
that's where
truly appreciate that. I guess I'm just thinking more in terms of
Yeah.
the goal of the
Yeah.
focus of this manifesto. Is
Yeah.
it the P20 or is it all Oregonians?
Yeah, and I guess I came across really strongly on that. So I would like to put it out to the group as, should we make this STEM plan about our educational system, or should it be more broadly focused?
Good question.
Well, I will tell you, the community college is 30% in the P12 world and 70% in the returning worker
That's a good point.
world. And so
Exactly.
I'm comfortable either way.
Yeah, I know.
But truly to ignore the notion that people are coming in, coming out,
Right.
short-term this and
That's a
incumbent worker
very good
that,
point.
I mean, is missing a lot, but
Right.
it makes everything really complicated, and sometimes this
Well-
is challenging for.
That's a
But,
really good
but not
point.
necessarily,
It's true.
because we can make recommendations that we invest as a state alongside of some of the federal programs in both community colleges and some of our trade and technical schools,
Particularly
right?
the CTE piece, which quite frankly isn't adequately supported in an educational
Yes.
funding framework. And the reason community colleges only do so
We
much
know that,
CTE
yeah.
is because it costs us so much more than it does to run a psychology class. So we put 35 people there so we can run one more section of welding. It's ridiculous. So part of this is, it's a larger conversation.
That's a good point.
So-
And to Thompson's point, it brings in the workforce system in, it brings in employers, when you look in that broader
I think,
community.
I think of, who are the, this goes back to that meeting the other day up in Portland, where you got, it was just startled, you got the workforce system, you got all these things going on in there, then you had the economic development side that didn't really connect to the workforce side. But essentially, it's, it seems like the idea isn't to stretch into areas, is to be smarter about how those
Yep.
areas communicate.
Yes.
So it doesn't hurt for us to focus on the education side of things, as long as we don't deny communicating with the workforce side of things, and make sure that we're talking so that the work that's happening supports on both sides. And that way, we carve out, this is the piece that we have influence over, and this is the piece that other folks have influence over, but we need to be talking to make sure that that influence isn't sending things off in strange directions.
Intentional communication between them.
So would one of a goal be, so I'm just playing with this because this has come up in those kinds of conversations where we're trying to, well, particularly around ETIC and talent council, et cetera, is increase the responsiveness of the education system to changing workforce and economic demands? I mean, that to me is a BHAG in and of itself, and
Yeah.
it can situate. So increasing responsiveness.
I would say, I agree with that concept, but I think it misses a little bit in that there are also ways to teach according to skills, et cetera, that are needed right now in the workforce. But in terms of how that articulates into future credentialing for the individual, I think there needs to be some suggestion of two-way. Because it's not just the institutions, which if they're not
Right.
up to date with workforce needs, they're out of it. I mean, it's just reality, right? So there's that.
Not
It
for
has
our
to
4
happen.
years, but for our
Well,
many colleges, that's true.
So there's that, right? That's really, really critical, which is what you just mentioned. But honestly, without attending to the long-term goal of, you know, ultimate, you know, progression of the individual towards things like management and, you know, you can't, to not lattice it into a system that offers, it could be credit, it could be additional skill gain, it could be something like that. I think you're missing, you're seeing the shorter term rather than the longer term. So I think but they have to be connected. So I wouldn't want it all one way. I think that misses part of it. Because there are reasons why institutions have tremendously difficult accrediting guidelines. It's because they have to do X, they have to do Y in order to do something. So there should be a value in that, but it needs to be relevant to what's actually happening in the workforce. And the big problem there is the speed of change. Industry moves quickly.
Right.
As institutions that are educational move far slower.
Right.
University's the slowest of all.
So that's what I'm saying.
So-
But that's,
How do we
so
build
one
this
of our
responsiveness?
goals has to be affecting the agility of that.
Yeah.
Because-
Agility of and the imperative for both sides to connect with each other.
Right, right. And so that's, so Andrew, did you have a comment on that?
Well, I just keep getting hung up on sort of chicken and egg. I mean, because like when you look at, I mean, in our world, it really does sort of, we work mostly with the community college system as a primary deliverer of technical skill training. But people have to be prepared and ready to take advantage of that technical skills training. And what we have now is a dearth of people who are ready to do that. I mean, what percentage of your incoming freshmen require remedial work? And once they have to go to remedial work,
94%, and that's math.
once they go to remedial work,
Holy crap.
the
they
the
have
odds
a
of
high
them
school
graduating
Yeah.
is, yeah, 94%.
And,
I thought it was
and-
64%.
No.
Oh, no, those are just high school graduates going directly into
Well, but yeah,
Okay.
and we've got a third of our high school students, I mean, you know, we and ABE, don't get us started here. And adult basic education is not compensated by the state.
Yeah.
So it's only however much largesse the institution has and can, we don't have a means to teach this hemorrhage out the bottom. And that hemorrhage is getting bigger with things like a more, you know, robust GED. And I mean, Andrew's exactly right. We have an issue here. And so CTE and some of these STEM conversations offer some tremendous opportunities to think creatively about, you know, trajectory and pipeline. And I'm telling you, and a lot of it is math oriented and confidence around math. If you have one bullet to shoot at this monster that is an ineffective system, it is that.
Love it.
So anyway, I'm sorry, but I mean, this is.
No, it is. It is true.
focus
If we don't address
This is the
math,
hard work. It's the hard work of getting those people to really come
That's the hardest
into
issue.
a situation where they're affected. And
Well, because this is core,
It's difficult.
it's not only core competence, it's core confidence.
exactly.
Because if you're not confident, it's really interesting. So we've been running this pilot program down in Dayton, Oregon, where we put an innovation academy into an required class for kids, where we said, okay, kids, you got a 6-week module, and you're going to go and design a solution using a mobile app, and you're going to also learn fundamental computational thinking. And these are kids from, from kids with Asperger's on to the brightest kids, right? And we're all going to do this together. I got to the end of this thing, and these guys just soared. They were brilliant. And I started asking, it was midterms, and I was saying, well, you guys you were wonderful. And I would sit down, he says, yeah, but I'm not, how are your other grades? Oh, they're not so good. Well, what's going on? Oh, I'm failing math. I had so many of these kids who just were brilliant.
And it's an
And-
equity issue. This is a-
Exactly, so this was firsthand, all of a sudden this realization, oh, this is really a systemic issue. And that was my aha moment on the other side was, oh, if we don't deal with the math issue, nothing else works. So you're saying it on one end, and I was saying on the other, and it's like,
It is jaw-dropping.
it is.
And
That's why
and
if
so-
it's strong enough, and
So a
these
lot of
goals-
this is
math
bottom line.
matters.
Well, and earlier Herb made a comment about if I don't pass calculus, then I failed everything.
Right.
Can't move forward.
And that student that he's talking about, you know, that the trajectory isn't there.
No, it doesn't mean calculus.
But he was saying that attitude,
Yeah.
And that
Right.
that hope,
confidence.
that confidence.
That I could actually aspire to a position and if we don't have the kids aspiring with that core confidence, there is no way that they're going to have the resilience to go into a technology-based education, to go into a technology-based job. So it's like, it's not going to work.
No. So this is excellent work that we're doing, but it's, I think the connectiveness is not just industry and education, it's across educational systems.
Yeah.
It's about, and this 40-40-20 goal, which is laudable, is completely unattainable if we don't worry, it's the 20. That's the hard part.
It's the 100%
It's
graduation.
the 20.
Which is, it's, right.
Well, and the
but,
middle 40,
but the
but-
whole point is that graduation itself, from the industry perspective, graduation means Zippo.
Yeah.
Because-
Well, without a
because-
GED or a high
Well,
school.
no, but it doesn't, but we
count.
don't, in our field, we don't even care that you graduate. We don't even look at that. We look at,
Competency.
we look at competency. We'll hire a kid who's a junior in high school.
And
Like
you
that.
do it a lot, and that screws with the graduation rate.
I was gonna say, yeah.
But it's, no,
Damn it, it's your fault.
but the point being is that even that, you know, but anyway, so I think that the point being is that the urgency that we talk about is important. And also this, I think that we need to call out, I think we've been skirting around this core fundamental issue. That if it's not STEM, it's STE sitting on top of M. And if we don't have a core confidence of M,
If you
Change
can't
it,
do
ST and
numeracy,
M.
you can't do most.
So,
Visual.
so as a math teacher and one who has researched extensively in mathematics learning, etc., I am excited by this and abhorred at the
And
same
horrified.
time and horrified because of the anyway entrenched cultures and perceptions around what math is and what math is not. It is and how it's taught is a huge issue. So I think
Well, it's
love
certain-
putting the urgency out there. Interestingly enough, Common Core-wise, in terms of mathematics, and this is something I just learned yesterday, is when the folks who created the Common Core went out and surveyed the expectations from K-12 educators about what mathematics should be taught, and then surveyed both 4-year and 2-year faculty, non-mathematic faculty, but the engineers, the science folks, it's fascinating because they want the basic skills with application, full stop. I mean, they want pre-algebra, essentially, but in an applied, fluid fashion, and statistics and quantitative thinking and
So I think the point is that when you get to the point where you turn the ST with on top of the big M, what that starts leading you down the path is you start teaching math
Double
completely
dosing, triple
disconnected from
Yeah.
the ST and the E. So it really is, fundamentally, that's one
It's
of
the
the
how
problems.
we
It's
teach
the
it.
how it's taught,
Yeah.
not necessarily. If you look at it, the kids were taught all of this stuff. It was all there.
It was told
It
to
just
They forget
was
it,
just
and they
yeah.
don't.
So it's really about that, which then that
Isn't
integrated.
it about
interconnected-
relevance?
Yeah, it's that
Right.
so there's
Right.
pieces there that
Application.
it definitely is a strong, a very critical piece that we just aren't doing right.
So let's
And,
make that one of our
so
primary
it needs to be
strategies.
focused,
Right.
we have to make sure we don't pull it out of everything
Exactly.
else and
Well, that's why
continue the
this on
same
the bottom, it's
trajectory.
almost like the roots of the tree.
Yeah.
and that's why,
Sorry.
no, I mean, Jessica, you made a really good point, and this is the key, is that if we have one bullet, right?
One.
And we recognize that STEM is this wedge of the potential transforming how we educate. So we understand that if we're successful in STEM, the potential is to unleash the opportunities broadly. But we understand in order for STEM to be successful, we have got to get this piece right. So if we're going to go and recognize that we want to, we have this big grandiose idea, we want a new world over here. But in order to have that new world over here, we got to figure this puzzle out fast.
If we go with the pipeline issue, if we go with a pipeline metaphor, because it's popular, even though I don't like it, the biggest leak, if you will, the thing that's knocking people off the pathway, the hemorrhage, is the mathematics all along, and it's all been mathematics.
It's not
But-
any worse here.
And the question is that we've got a lot of very smart people who are very good teachers, there's a lot of great practice happening out there. There was a lot of, when you look at the policy platform practice paradigm, that, we at the policy level can say yes. There are a slew of new platforms, of new capacities that are coming out. The people are kind of going, how do these, the challenge that I'm seeing is at the practice level. How do I, as a teacher, actually conduct and create an experience utilizing these new platforms? So if we begin to encourage the new practices and to understand how do we create new experiences utilizing the platforms that are in alignment with a policy, we could very quickly, I believe, be transformational within a 5-year framework. So while we set a 5-year BHAG, I think that that's not an outrageously audacious
So it's
idea.
restorative mathematics.
It's empowered mathematics where we unleash the language of the universe.
Yeah, that's that works for me, man. But
No, wait.
We should change the name. Don't call it math anymore. I mean,
Exactly.
part of,
call it something else. Yeah.
I can say this because my wife is a teacher and she teaches in PBS, and they probably had 5 or 6 different curriculum over the course of the last 8 years. Math curriculum.
Oh, no.
And all good, usually.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
it's
awesome.
like, if you run a business, you buy something and then you ride herd on it because you can't improve it until you know exactly where you need to improve it. So every year, if you're switching curriculum, it's like no one figures it out. They don't have enough time
There's
to
no
do it.
benchmarking going on either.
And
Oh, like what?
it's more than curriculum, because there's nothing
That's
about
the red
right
herring.
men that makes them, inherently make them better at doing this. This is something that has many other factors around it. And part of the challenge, of course, is the pipeline. Part of the challenge is we have a lot of adults coming back and figuring out how best and quickly, but it's not just the curriculum. And it's not just the
Well-
applied. I mean, there are things
So
around
here's
this.
a systemic change. Every
Oh, exciting.
mathematics
Right now.
teacher in the state to be certified and to teach mathematics must have 5 years of experience in industry. Anyway, since we have 3 minutes left, here we go. TSPC might have a big.
But I do think that.
And paid less.
But I do think that this is recognized. This is not an unrecognized issue. I think that.
But no one's courageous enough to step into it.
Wait a minute.
That's
No. I wouldn't say that. I would say that people are too fearful to step into it.
Yeah, they
That's a
Actually,
different,
yeah.
but because I think what happens here is that when you are having the teachers who are the experts, and I mean, you look at what Terrell is doing in his class, and you go,
It's math.
oh my God, you are igniting. I mean, it's just like it's because he's using a new learning model, right?
Yeah.
Now, that's because he can carve off a little corner over here and do it. If you have a traditional math teacher, they are so tired and so devalued because even when they feel like they've embraced it, no, said, well, actually what you did was wrong. This is the new way. It's like, what do you, I mean, how many,
We don't have resources in professional
Right.
development.
but the way that it is, I mean, there's a whole cultural aspect that fundamentally needs to change about how it is that we teach,
Like school versus
right? And that we went from a tutorial model to a classroom model, and is it possible to go to a community model within a class learning environment? Now, that is really where the challenge. No, Mark, don't smile at me like that. The point being is that there is a huge desire to change from the superintendents, from the teachers, from us. And that this is not 5 years ago. We are at a tipping point right now of if we can begin to change, we can begin to create the new experiences, it's gonna cascade really fast. But what's needed is understanding and have confidence in the new practices, which allow you to let go of the white knuckle holding on to what you know, and to move into a new practice. But that requires you to have the evidence or the models of what that new experience might be. So we need to find out where we're going to pilot new models of reimagining how we teach the art of math.
And there are, we've done a pilot for 3 years.
You've done some great things with
We've done
CTE
published
and
all
math.
the results and everything.
And so the question is did
And
that
what were the
become
results?
viral and did that be absorbed?
No, that's the problem.
Exactly.
The problem from my perspective, is people, what you kind of addressed, is people looking for permission.
Yeah.
And even though permission is there, it's not there at the right level.
Right.
You know, so you've got people doing some courageous things and different kinds of things, but they're always looking over their shoulder, am I doing the right thing? You know,
Am I going to get dinged?
Am I going to go to math jail or something?
Yeah.
You know, so,
Well,
something
and
like
my principal going to walk in, and is that going to affect my...
or somebody from the state, whoever it is, I'm not sure who that
Or
person is. Well,
A
no,
bunch
it's
of mad
Mark.
parents wiped out IMP at Southbridge.
Yeah.
Well, so
Doesn't fit
Let's
with
talk more
selective
about
college requirements.
Yeah, but it's
so math
Yeah.
needs to be prioritized in
Yeah.
our strategies as one of the first things out of the gate.
So,
Put it in the
Just-
goals so the
Identify
strategies
this.
intentionally address it, just like that.
so as a time check, we're at our. Do we have enough for? It sounds like we have a lot of good notes here, a lot of
We
good
do.
content. What we need to do is get them back into the document, and then for us as a group to go and start making a bunch of edits on this thing. Work through it again, go through the same process we've gone through, and on our next meeting, come back and really hone in on those goals, review the goals, make sure that we're kind of getting there, that this is all feeling good, we'll have alignment. And then we've got to quickly get into,
Yep. Let's set ourselves a time frame for when do we want this out to the field. Okay, I want to sort of a date to where do we push this out
to what, to the
That's so
field
So,
being
so,
what?
and what does the
Is there
field
urgency?
look like? I mean, so if we're
Urgency.
sprinting,
That has to be
I want a sense of urgency around this work so we don't spin.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would
this
love to put it out to
everything?
a couple of things. One, to the attendees to the STEM Leadership Summit. We had 150 people there, last year, representing a broad spectrum of industry, education, out-of-school providers, early learning, politicians, etc. Push this out to test things out. I'd like to put it out to our STEM Hub, the broader STEM Hub network that goes out to educators as well. And then we need to tap into industry and workforce as well, and to get it out to those groups. Community college presidents and et cetera would be a fantastic place to go as well. So let's try within the next little span to define who else needs to be included in the feedback that we get.
And is this everything we would send to them?
I think from the manifesto to goals to initial strategies, that's
So
what I would
we-
like without the whole
Okay.
context and everything else. We need to make the case and all of that stuff and make it look pretty and publish it and all that, but let's get the,
We're gonna do strategies before they see the rest of the
yeah,
manifesto.
exactly.
Because otherwise
It-
they're gonna say, well.
Where's your strategy?
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm just saying, what's our date for putting that out? Is it at the end of March? Is it mid-March?
When's the next meeting?
When do we meet again?
We are, yeah,
Well, I think it seemed like-
I think we're saying 6-week sprints is what we
20th
said.
of March.
Thank you. So by
So
March
it seemed like-
20th.
seemed like you've got some online time to massage, you've got some face-to-face, one face-to-face meeting to kind of deal with some of the issues, then you got a little more time to clean it up and then it goes.
Tax date, April 15th, goes to the field.
Yikes.
Okay.
Well, because we need it back and approved by the STEM Investment Council
Well, do you
to then by June to put forward to the OEIB.
for the strategies, things we're going to work on the collective document first, or are we gonna do
Yes.
that and then we'll do the in-person follow-up?
Yes,
That seems like.
Yeah,
yes,
because
yes.
otherwise we'll
So
spend
in
our
this next
lives
6
doing
weeks, we need to map some of that out, and I'm gonna tap a couple of people to make sure that we've got, aligned strategies, knowing what has worked and what hasn't worked previously in education space, to get very specific on some of that stuff. And then Jessica, let's talk math to amp that up, because
Let's
we've
talk
talked,
math. Let's do
we've
it.
talked several
Yeah.
times, but let's do so more urgently and get
More
some people together. So we can get a parallel effort
I don't want
going.
to get any less.
You collecting these, Joe?
Yeah, Craig, sorry, we've sort of ignored you in the last,
40 minutes.
No, I've been part of it, listening. I think we've got a lot of work ahead of us, and it is something we got to look at as actionable. We've got to drive this as important with the date
That would be
deadline.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works.
yeah, thanks,
Do you have the
thanks,
link
Craig.
to that yet, or-
Mark sent it to me last night.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you all, really appreciate the thinking. Take care.